All right, I believe we're live. If you would, let me know if you can hear the sound very well. If you can hear the sound, then we'll move on. So, starting with introductions, my name is Jay Roulette. I am the owner of Section8Consulting.com. I work with around 1,000 clients a year, helping them navigate the system and in some cases doing casework, answering a bunch of questions that typically they cannot get answered through the Housing Authority and through other methods, including 211 or even HUD. And so with that being said, today we're going to discuss around 24 to 30 different types of housing, vouchers, laws, programs, and other methods that can be used at the state and federal level to get you housing. There's a plethora of options that most of you are unequivocally unaware of, and today I hope to address that. In fact, the previous video I made years ago regarding this matter is probably one of the most popular, other than how to get emergency housing, and that will be discussed today. And see if y'all can pick out the one program I'm going to be including in the video that doesn't exist, but I've kind of coined the phrase for it because it's a rather interesting one. And good morning, Brooklyn Nicole. Now, guys, I know you're going to have questions, but look, there's a lot to go through. In fact, this type of video, I often have to make notes despite my long history and understanding of these programs, because without the notes, sometimes I fail to give all the fair and accurate details. So getting started, we're going to discuss first some of the programs, and I'm going to read off a list here. And so we'll all fundamentally understand what Section 8 is, okay? It was an old coin term from 1972, and it encompasses generally all programs out there. Then there's Section 9, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Then there's Section 811. Many of you have heard of that and often frequently ask me about that by phone and email. Then there's Section 202. Now, when we're talking about these sections, it's just like tax law. So under codified regulation, if you look at Cornell law, you'll see that Title 24 encompasses many subsections of HUD's code, and these are different titles and acts and laws. And so Section 202, HUD Vash for those veterans, VAWA, HOPWA, HOPWA, Coordinated Entry System that are known as CES or CE, and also better known as BOSS or BOSS, the Continuum of Care, HIMS system, Shelter Plus, Rapid Rehousing, Permanent Supportive Housing, Emergency Housing Voucher, HUD Homeownership Program, Subsidized Housing, Low-Income Housing, Affordable Housing, Project-Based Housing, Public Housing, Tenant-based Housing, and the Family Self-Sufficiency Program, better known as SSF or SSPF. And that's a long list, right? So if I were you, guys, I would bookmark the video, and then that way you can revisit and rewind as you need to do so, because you probably want to be prepared with a pen and pad, because many of you reach out to me through bookings and appointments, and you've already got a laundry list of options you want to explore. This video is going to help you better kind of shop around and figure out what best works and what you qualify for. So that being said, let me pull up my notes real quick, and we're going to start going through these programs and pick them apart. So Section 811, which is PRA or public, it's basically what a PRA is a public housing authority using public subsidies and for people with disabilities living in institutions or people that wish to transition to the community from nursing facilities or intermediate care facilities for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities that may not have access to afford housing in their community. But it's not just limited to that focus. That is the primary focus of what they're looking for. But Section 811 essentially serves those that are 18 to 61 that have disabilities, or a person in the composition of the household that has a disability. So that would be the more broad use of the program. It also goes on to say that people with serious mental illness, individuals engaging in services but facing challenges due to housing instability, stable, integrated or affordable housing would enable these individuals to have an opportunity to fully engage in rehabilitation treatment and greatly improve their prospects of realizing their full potential. But the reality is, a lot of what Section 811 is essentially those, a family with a person that's disabled, and they offer wraparound resources. Wraparound resources are those things where you might get Meals on Wheels, you might have caseworker to come out and talk to you and offer you some of the other existential services offered through the state and the county. Okay. It also addresses those that are youth that have disabilities from existing foster care, or maybe they're aging out, and youth existing from foster care. You know, when you think about this foster care kids, a lot of them go homeless because the responsibility of the people that are taking care of them usually do end at 18, and comprehensively, they're not going to probably fund cars and other things for them. So now we're going to move on to Section 202, and that would be subsection 202 of Title 24. Program helps expand the supply of housing with supportive services for those that are elderly and frail. It provides very low-income housing to the elderly with options that allow them to live independently, but in an environment that provides supportive activities such as cleaning, cooking, and transportation. Look, guys, Section 202 is anybody that's old, okay? Old is considered 62 and older by federal statute. And look, it's the same as having a lemonade aide that comes in and cleans, cooks, does stuff for you. There's really no differentiation there. It's not really, you don't have to live in supportive housing where you have somebody that's constantly, invading your privacy. So I don't want you to interpret that program as that, but it's offered that way if you want that, okay? HUD Vash for veterans. Those of you who served our nation have honorably discharged in many of the methods, many of the other codes they give that is not dishonorable could be considered. The program combines a housing choice voucher, which is HCV, or housing choice vouchers, they say is a acronym, and rental assistance for homeless veterans, and also includes case management. You don't necessarily need to be homeless in order to utilize HUD Vash. You just need to be a veteran, but the bigger target of who they're looking for is those that are probably imminently homeless. It means close to it, can't afford housing, rent's too high, and maybe you've got to go, or all the way down to those that are actually homeless, okay? So sometimes the definition of these programs, you see that they're a little bit confusing, as they will always address the most severe cases, but often it encompasses a much larger portion of people. Then we have VAWA, which is domestic violence against women, and that is an act or law, and the law provides survivors with much needed resources for housing, legal assistance, alternatives to criminal responses, and prevention programs. But the core of the program provides under VAWA is housing for those that are domestic violence survivors, and also those fleeing from potential of being involved in trafficking and other things, okay? All right, take a sip of coffee here, and then I'm going to take a look, see if we have any comments, and we'll move on to HOPWA. Good morning, Izzy, and hello, how are you? Donna Harris, good morning. Dews, good morning from the Ozark. I got to land out in the Ozarks. I got a letter in the mail the other day. Somebody made an offer to me for my chunk of land out there in the Ozarks, and I declined. So, by the way, guys, you might see that some of my cats may intercede in the video. Don't be shocked. They may jump up and lick my hair or sit on my shoulder. So we'll see what happens in this video. But in many cases, my herd of cats quite enjoy being little stars when they want to. So far, it's been pretty quiet for this video. All right, moving on to HOPWA. HOPWA, Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, AIDS. Program is the only federal program dedicated to the housing needs of people living with HIV or AIDS. Under the HOPWA program, HUD makes grants to local communities, states, and nonprofit organizations. And what all that adds up to is a lot like Ron White program. You can utilize HOPWA towards rent, just like you would a housing choice voucher, and it provides housing. But the core of the program is assisting and funding those that suffer from that particular issue with HIV or AIDS, okay? Now, we talk about Coordinated Entry System, or CES, or CE, which is a powerful piece of community housing crisis response system that ensures that people at risk of homelessness can readily access and navigate housing assistance. Widely used by our office to help a lot of people. No matter where in the community they first seek help, it's designed so that households are prioritized for the matching and intervention as quickly as possible based on their vulnerability index and how severe their needs are. Overall, CE aims to standardize the access assessment, prioritization, and referral process across all agencies within the city. So what is truly CES? CES is Well, a lot of us think of the housing authority, and they have vouchers, and they have project-based housing and all that. But there's a secondary system in place, which is coordinated entry, COC, and Continuum of Care. And this program, what it does, it allows a number of vouchers. And we're going to go over those vouchers in a minute. But before I do so, let's talk about Continuum of Care. Continuum of Care program is designed to promote community-wide commitment to the goal of ending homelessness and providing funding for efforts for nonprofits, providers, state and local governments to quickly rehouse homeless. So CES and Continuum of Care are essentially the same thing. And then you run into a system called HMIS, which is a Homeless Management Information System, which is the algorithm and database in which they use to categorize people. Now, under that system, you'll find that these are the options that are afforded to you. You have Shelter Plus. I don't think most people want that, but under the HEARTH Act, consolidates the 3 separate McKinney-Vino homeless assistance programs, including supportive housing, Shelter Plus program, Section 8 moderate rehabilitation SRO program, into a single grant program called Continuum of Care, or COC, as many of you have heard me talk about. And so what happens here is they offer rapid rehousing, and rapid rehousing is a primary solution for ending homelessness. It's a situation where they'll pay all the rent for a couple of months, and then the payments will degrade as you start to stabilize. So first couple of months, say your rent's $1,000, they'll pay $1,000 of January, $1,000 February, $1,000 March, and then after that, you may notice the payments will go down to $900, and so it's slowly exiting you over a period of a year, and it's as far out as 2 years. Okay, so it's not a permanent voucher. Permanent supportive housing is, or better known as PSH, is a permanent housing in which you have long-term leasing and rental assistance and supportive services are provided to assist households with at least one member or adult or child with a disability. So permanent supportive housing is the equivalent of Section 811. Okay, it's just administered differently. And then last but least, and what most of you are looking for, would be the emergency housing voucher. Through the duration of HUD's existence and all the housing authorities, most emergency housing vouchers were issued through the housing authority. Through the pandemic, that has changed, and now the COC is the person that issues, or CES is the organization that issues the emergency housing voucher. Emergency housing voucher is the same thing as a housing choice voucher. It comes with a number of things, and it addresses those that may be fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, human trafficking, and many other things, including homelessness. But on a wider volume of it, it'll address anybody that essentially is in a situation that can't afford housing, and you could be imminently homeless with all your stuff on the sidewalk. So now I'm going to skip back. Now, if you remember, guys, I talked about Section 8. Let's talk about Section 9. So there is one voucher you can get really, really quick, but the terms of using Section 9 rather than Section 8 are very, very different. So it affords you a lease over anywhere from years to decades or even a lifetime. And so you would commit a federal crime, and then they would arrest you, throw you in jail. You'd go to court, and then they would send you to a federal prison where you'd receive Section 9 voucher. In there, you would not receive the key to your door. They'll provide 3 hots and a cot, and they will keep you for as long as you need to serve that sentence. So it is a form of housing, and does Section 9 technically exist? No, but I would say that if it did, economically, that would be the federal prison system. So I would tell you guys that Section 9 should never be an option for any of you, but should you need that, it's certainly available, okay? Now, many of you have asked about the HUD Homeownership program. That program has been around now probably 23 years or longer. It has gone through a lot of changes. It was widely available in the early 2000s. It was reduced vastly by 2016, and we do face an evaporation of the program and its funding potentially in the next couple of years, because there is a lot of talk right now defunding vast portions of that, and there are not that many housing authorities left in America that offer it. Now, when I say not that many, let's consider there are 2,800 housing authorities or more. So I would say to you that when it comes to that program, there are still hundreds of places you can get it, okay? But what I'm going to tell you is if you're in a state and you've got 60 counties, then you may only find about 10 of them that are going to offer it. So All right, moving down to comments. Daniel, good morning. How are you doing? Thanks for all the hard work. I'm 63 on SSDI. Should I wait till September to apply? No. Look, guys, we're exiting summer, okay? August is coming. We're in August, right? Almost tomorrow. And as we get into August, that means the last 30 days of hell is over. And then we move into the golden area of the year. That's when the demand for vouchers, housing, and subsidies start to drop off a bridge, really, because nobody at that point, the crowd of people needing this reduces by 100%. And so September, October, November, December, excellent. Closer you get to December, great. January, February, March, and April. So by the time you reach April, it starts dying off, and then you get a big Black Friday waiting list, okay? So we're moving that golden period, so it doesn't hurt to start early. I'm glad this is over with, because this has been the most ridiculous summer that I can remember in history, besides burning up in my own city of Houston. Dealing with cases during the summer is always miserable. Too many people. Everybody wants to move. Everybody wants an impossible voucher. And so we're moving into that great period where I recommend, if you guys are looking to jump on and get a voucher, or even have a company like mine help you work through that system, now would be the time, because now we're moving in that really good period, and we only got 30 days left. That's it. And then most casework takes around 4, maybe 6 months. So it puts you in that great area that you want to be in, because most of you are going to regret yourself when you get to next April and you didn't do anything. And then you get into summertime and it's stagnant, it's dead. Housing authorities will shut down. Right now, there are so many of them that are closed, and you'll see that they'll all open up the minute the crowd dies down. That's all logistical planning on their part. They know when the crowd's intense, and that's when they close. It's carefully orchestrated plan, I think, sometimes how they do that. All right, I'm going to move back here to our case notes, and we're going to talk about some other types of housing. So, HUD Homeownership. So the Housing Choice Voucher, or HCV, if you participated for 12 months and you have an income or a job, then it would allow a family or a person that is assisted under the HCV program to buy a home and receive a monthly assistance for their expenses. So let me give you a less technical reason as what this is. If you have a housing voucher and you go rent from Bob that owns his house, and you give him that voucher money, you're paying his mortgage, okay? With the Housing Choice, the HUD Homeownership program, instead of giving Bob your voucher, you give it to yourself, and you pay your mortgage, okay? Pay 70% of your mortgage. You still have to kick in your part. Now, all that money going into that mortgage of a house that you own, that money can be pulled out later, because that's called equity, right? So in my opinion, that is the best deal in America. If you can get the United States government to pay 70% of your mortgage, but I would say that probably that's the hottest deal on the block. A lot of you need to graduate out of vouchers. Many of you contact me. Oh, I've been in Section 8 25 years. By now, you could have owned and paid for that house. You guys have got to stop with the vouchers, and you got to graduate yourself. If you're going to do 12 months time in a projects, why not graduate yourself and buy a modest home utilizing the voucher? Go through the miserable process of what it takes. It does take a while to be able to secure the home and follow all the policies, rules, and classes. But I mean, if you've already been sitting there broke as a joke in your house on a fixed income and other things, at least you can be broke as a joke in your own home. Why do it with a voucher? Clearly, you guys have got to be getting tired of hearing barking dogs and screaming children, and then having the landlord you dictate every policy to you when you can and can't. Why not own your own home where you can dictate what you want to do? And all those extra rooms in the house, go rent them. Get somebody else to pay your mortgage as well. That's a much better play. Think business-minded, okay? So yes, home ownership is the way to go. All right, so the famous project-based housing. Let's talk about that. So you go to the housing authority, hey man, I want a voucher so I can have the choice of living where I want. Well, when you go to the housing authority and you don't want the choice, then the housing authority will go out and it'll use its money it gets from the government to go buy homes and properties, and they'll put you in that property. Now, if you think that Sally over there at the housing authority that already hung up on you and talked shit to you on the phone, now imagine she's also now going to be a landlord. That's project-based housing. Then we're going to take that where the housing authority is now in control of your voucher. They're now in control of your property because of your landlord, and they're going to move you in an area where you get victimized. That's a fantastic fucking plan, right? Go do project-based housing. What do we call that? Public housing. Unless you got a loose screw, I would never make the housing authority both the person that issues the voucher and also your landlord, because then what are you doing? That's like the county jail. You say anything, you complain about anything, then people find any way they can to put you out of there. Also, project-based housing is not a voucher because of no portability. So they put you out that front door, you start all over again. If you want a voucher after that, you got to sit on another list and wait again, because the project-based housing, the funding is attached to the doorknob. When you close that door behind you and you are thrown out or put out or move out, it all starts at zero. You don't go nowhere. You got to start this whole damn thing again. I don't recommend that, okay? Tenant-based housing. That is when a landlord makes an agreement with the United States government, mainly HUD as a federal agency, and receives LITch or tax credit property, tax credits for a course of a duration of 10 or 40 years, and they allocate a certain number of their units towards subsidizing those that are low income. This is not a voucher, and often the subsidy only will cover half the rent, and then you got to do the rest. So that's for people that don't quite meet the serious demand of a voucher, but just want something low income. Many of these tenant-based houses can be sub-designated as Section 811 funding, can have Section 811 funding, or Section 202, which means it may be a seniors with disabilities property. It could be a property with that's funded by Section 811, where you have people that are 18 to 61 that are not seniors living there, and they can have a mixture of market rate, which means people work a normal job with no subsidy or voucher. So it's quite a mix. But what it also means is the housing authority doesn't own it. So I don't think that tenant-based housing is that bad. It's a good option for those of you that are prepared to wait. But understand that tenant-based housing and project-based housing and waiting lists, those waiting lists are not, there's no federal oversight to that. If Sally goes in the back office, lights a cigarette, runs her bingo wheel, she can keep rerunning the balls and pulling whoever she wants. There's nobody there to make sure it's justified. So she can tell you when you're, hey, you know what, you're on the list for the property, and it's 2 years, and then you call back 2 years later or a year and a half later, she can tell you, oh, now it's 7 years. Why? Because she can sit there and keep running people's applications, and they can simply just accept everybody that has the highest amount of money and the best credit score, and there's nobody there to see the prejudicial behavior. And so not only that, but you're chasing an ambulance, aren't you? Because you'd have to sit in your car and you're waiting for somebody to literally die and move out, because subsidies, those properties are usually always full and always on a waiting list. And so it really does come down. There's no way to influence that system, you know? Moving on from there, we have Family Sufficiency Program. That's a little bit different than the HUD Homeownership Program. So there are two main features to it: case management and financial coaching services, which is usually just a bunch of nonsense. But the reality of it is, what they do offer, and related to this, is they help you access services like childcare, credit repair, and offer assistance in achieving your goals. But under the financial incentive, a family makes increased earnings and pays higher rent, but also receives higher payments in an escrow account. So in other words, think of a 401k3 or a Roth investment. They're putting money for every dollar you're paying in the rent. They're putting $1 in escrow for you. And at the end of that 5-year period, you've got a wad of cash and you exit. But the problem, this is an exploding program. Once you receive the gift of 5 years of cash in a bank account after you pay in and they pay in, they're not going to have you come back and then say, hey, I need a voucher. They've now found a way to just exit you permanently. So only use that. You're only going to use it once, okay? Again, HUD Homeownership Program would likely be a better option, okay? I understand self-sufficiency, and that may be for those of you that may only experience one event in life, but I have to be honest. In the world that we live in today, look, multiple events, minimum 3 times. Almost everybody I know has been almost dragged to hell and back 3 times in a lifetime, if not more than that. So I don't see how the Family Self-Sufficiency Program is that great of benefits, considering the world that we live in and how much things can change, you know. So that is a summary and a very brief summary of some of your options. I think the primary focus most of you should have is receiving a housing choice voucher, emergency housing voucher, Section 202 for seniors, Section 811 for those with family member with disabilities. Those of you that are veterans, HUD Vash, those are primary programs that I would suggest that you look further into and see whether or not that's going to be equitable for you and work out. Anytime you deal with vouchers, you clearly want the option to port, because as you get older, you may need to move closer to family. Subsidies are for those of you that aren't really that low income, but could use the additional bonus off rent. But you're paying to live in a low income property to alleviate rent, just so you can live in a bad area, is a pretty bad trade off, in my opinion. Especially when you can have the choice of it and then have a 70% reduction of rent. So it's strictly up to your opinion, what fits your life. Guys, if you're out there, you're struggling with housing, the system, and understanding things, you can't get answers, you're having problems with discrimination, you have a problem with your landlord, your housing authority, HUD itself, give our office a call. We offer services there, whether it's 15 minutes or 30 minutes, or for those of you that have attempted to go out there and get a voucher and you're still tapping your fingers on your desk 15 years later and you don't understand why you have a voucher, then maybe it's time to reach out to somebody that understands the system more preferentially. When you think and look at all the things that are involved, there's a lot of moving mechanisms to the system itself. You're talking about reading policies, procedures, data manuals, reading titles, acts, laws, understanding Code of Federal Regulation, Title 24. And when you combine that, it means you have to have a combined knowledge of not just what works in one county. And for me to be able to transverse the U.S. and deal with every state means that I would have to understand individual policies, procedures, and data manuals for nearly every housing authority, around 2,800, which would put you at about 3 terabytes of information, right? That's a lot to put in your head, and be able to recode that at any time when clients ask questions. And to date, there's only been 3 people that have managed to ask me a question I couldn't answer without having to think really, really hard. So I think that I'm favorably a walking library when it comes to that. One of the other things that gives a little bit more appeal and understanding of the system is, at one point in my own life, I faced homelessness. And it's through that adversity that I do understand what it means to walk a mile in a man's shoes, or a woman's. Well, I don't walk in women's shoes, but you get my point. But I think the real point here is to understand how important this is for people to get through, to have their understanding, to be apprised of their federal rights, their state rights, their county rights, to be able to navigate a system that fundamentally doesn't want to give you answers, training, teaching. They don't even, they don't want to apprise you of all those things. So you're left at the mercy of kindness. And many of you believe that a really good hard luck story or conveying your sympathies to the housing authority is going to get you anything. And in many cases, it will not. There's 1 in 10 housing authorities operate ethically and above board, and many, many more operate very badly. And a lot of it has to do with, low-paid employees that are not fully trained or even educated. And don't be shocked. I've contacted many housing authorities and verbatim their own policies. And the woman on the phone line would go dead, not because she was shocked at my ability to understand the internal process. They were shocked at the fact they didn't even know what the hell I was talking about. Imagine that one. Guys, the housing authority that sits locally in your city, that is not HUD. That's a local agency that disperses federal funds and vouchers, okay? HUD's a different federal agency that oversees all these housing authorities. A lot of you guys think these things are the same. They're not. And so housing authorities are privately owned. They also can be owned by the city or a conglomerate. And some of the most atrocious personalities you'll ever run into will be there. And trying to get answers is like pulling teeth. I always tell people you don't have really about 3 options, 211, 311. You can call the housing authority if you can get them on the line, or you can get them to return your call, and you can deal with HUD. The only agency out of all that group that I have a deep respect for is HUD itself, because HUD doesn't issue vouchers. It just gives out that money to each state and housing authority. HUD's out there to defend you guys. A lot of you guys confuse that. You think you've got a problem with HUD. No, you got a problem with your housing authority. HUD, in my opinion, has always ran well. And I think that Marissa Fudge, that oversees HUD, she's been on a rampage. She's been suing housing authorities. I've never seen HUD ran any better than it could be under under her jurisdiction. So HUD itself does a phenomenal job with what it's given. And next year, we face a defunding crisis. The election year, politics are going to play a big role in this, and a big portion of this will likely get defunded. And so for a lot of you sitting on your hands right now thinking, well, gee, I can't pay the rent. If you don't do something before all this stuff goes down and they defund and politics change hands, then you could end up in a situation where it becomes more dire, because they would rather fund the wars and potholes than housing, because that's just the way that they do things. The rich make the decisions for the rest of the population. And those that up there, those lawmakers that smoke those cigars and drink brandy, you think they give a shit about what happens to you, whether you get housing or not? A lot of a lot of the veterans out here don't, same thing. They serve their country, but these people don't give a shit whether you get anything. Why else would I see so many seniors and disabled and veterans and domestic violence victims sitting with a change cup at the corner? Okay, but we got trillions and billions for little wars that aren't even ours. Again, my motivations are not political. I'm just suggesting to you that we can't even fix our own fucking house, but we've got money to spread in every nation on the planet. Now, I understand those people in Ukraine and everywhere else need help, but I think people here need it. And let me tell you a little secret. Both Democrats and Republicans use vouchers. Imagine that shit. Both. Okay? So if you're wondering, I serve both communities. I also serve the Christian community, the Buddhist community, the gay community. Any community you're in, you're always welcome, okay? I don't have any opinions about any of that stuff. What I see are humans that require housing and a voucher. And they would like to get an educated answer and somebody that can get the fucking job done. Let's be real. If you're here to trade pleasantries and kindnesses, that's fine. You can always go over to the channel where Nancy's making cakes and she's talking about fidget spinners. Here, we need to ensure that you understand what the truth is, because if you're going to have people lie to your face, then how are you ever going to trust the people you deal with? And when it comes to housing, you either play to win or you play to lose. And that's the reality of this. It's not based on need. It's not based on any of that stuff. It's based on whether or not you have the capability to understand the system, to get in it and get it done. So, all that being said, I have really, really enjoyed talking to you all today. For those of you that don't enjoy profanities, tough shit, that happens occasionally on this channel. My channel, I do what I want. I always think that profanities convey the true gravity of a situation, but it is what it is, right? Beyond that, let me recognize a few people here. Good morning, Izzy. Good morning, Donna Harris. Good morning, Dews. Good morning, Daniel. Brooklyn Nicole's on a kick. Lots of back and forth with Miss Brooklyn. KC, good morning. And that looks like that's it, guys. If y'all have questions, concerns, and issues, and you need answers, I'm going to put up some information regarding our company. Look, you don't have to hire. Let's be clear about something, guys. You can always call 211. They will give you 2 or 3 minutes of their time before they giggle and hang up, okay? You can get free advice from them. Same thing with 311. You can also call the housing authority. They'll call you back in a month or two, and they'll talk to you for a few minutes before they giggle and hang up, okay? The service, however, it's for those of you that need it, that want to, that can afford to do so, okay? I don't think it's that expensive, but I'm not going to justify it either. I'm a last resort when all other things have failed. So I would say to you, try your own best efforts, and if all else fails and you need professional help, then reach out. If not, hey, there's lots of free options out there. You may not like how it goes down or how you get treated or talked to, but that's what free is, okay? All right, guys, y'all have a great weekend. I'm going to go pet all my cats. And by the way, let's talk about that for you pet lovers. Now, many of you know that I rescue cats, right? And at one point I had 32. So we have a core group left, and I want to give a few updates. Bunny's doing well. That was the one that has spina bifida, no tail, and incontinence, okay? Bunny's doing really great. He's going to live a long time. Unfortunately, all his brothers and sisters died because they were literally missing organs and other things that there was no physical way to fix those kittens. And so they had to go and meet Jesus, okay? There was no way for them to live. Little Mama, many of them remember her when she was a baby earlier in the channel. She is now one of my biggest cats. She clearly has been mixed with some other type of potentially wildcat, I think. She's very tall. She's very big, and she rivals even Grandma Gracie. And as you know, I have a very, very old cat with a broken back because of a rather nasty owner. And so, guys, I rescued these cats because of what's happened to them. Because these cats, I like for them to be able to leave this earth without having to leave with a final opinion that humans are horrible. So it leaves them to be able to leave and retire with me and not have to worry about things again. So I think it's a good effort. I won't earn any extra stars or bonuses for it, but I quite enjoy my mangled bunch of muffins, and they enjoy my company, and I couldn't ask for more. I could have them, or I can go buy a fancy new iPhone that'll be worthless in about 3 years when they create a new one. Or I go take a nice vacation, or buy me a Lincoln Navigator and go impress somebody. But I choose to use my money on living things. That's what's important to me. And so anyways, guys, I hope y'all enjoyed the updates. I'll bring the other Kikis in the video next time, or they'll jump in when they want to. For now, take care. Well, where's an off button? There it is.